This short presentation is looking at Assessment 2 for BSOE 624, and this is the report, or it's actually a newspaper article here. Now is worth 30% of the final mark and is due on the 8th of October. From the middle page of BSOE 624, click on the Assessments tab, and then the grey tab down the end, AT2 newspaper article, click on that, and you'll see this is where the explanation here of the YouTube clip about the article is, and here are two exemplars here of what students have done in the past using a contemporary issue and explaining the Resource Management Act and the consent process through that example. So there's two exemplars there for you to look at just to see what has been done before. And here's the Dropbox that you need to upload your newspaper article to. And just when you do upload it, if you can make sure that you have the file name as your first name underscore last name underscore BSOE624 underscore 2021 AT2 would be great. Newspaper article around 1800 words. What you need to do for this assessment task is to choose a contemporary issue that has just gone through the resource consent process or going through the process, and you need to be able to describe the Resource Management Act process, or the process of going through a resource consent, which obviously is you have to talk about the Resource Management Act, and what is required for the steps to get a resource consent using that example that you've chosen. So you're explaining two things as you in this article. You're explaining the process to get a resource consent, and right back to the legislation, RMA legislation, as well as explaining about the issue and how they relate together. You need to present the different stakeholder perspectives. So what are the different, who are the key stakeholders involved? And usually it'd be the council, the city council, or the district council or the regional council who are overseeing it. So that comes under this one here, who plans for how the resources will be used and selected. One of those two. What is the consent process? So you need to identify those steps that should be shown in class, and who are the stakeholders. So those stakeholders are who has the most vested interest in this resource consent proposal. All right, and I'll explain more about that in the next slide when I talk about examples. All right, and then how might you use the public participation process in order to have an influence on decisions? So how can people have an influence on this decision? And there's different ways of resource consent can go through. It can go through as publicly notified, which means anyone from the public can have participate into whether they agree or disagree or are neutral on whether that topic should go ahead, or probably the more common one is where they select certain people or certain stakeholders to provide feedback, not the whole public. So some examples that students have used in the past, in the recent past, are the gondola at Whakapapa in Ruapehu in the Central North Island, what's actually up and running now. Wind farm application down Queenstown Way, Project Hayes, Wellington Runway extension, water bottling here in Christchurch, 1080 drops, Ngapunawai Sports Hub, Christchurch, Mussel Farm proposal, quarrying, two recent ones, Rangiora Racecourse and Templeton, and then probably getting a little bit dated now, but there's a Central Plains water scheme. So some fairly big projects there to write about, and 1800 words isn't a lot of words to try and condense all the information that you need to get in there. Now, in terms of some of the stakeholders, as I mentioned earlier, so let's take the quarry, for example. So obviously the the civil construction companies like Fort and Hogan they're a stakeholder. They're one of the ones who put in an application for this resource consent to dig a new quarry. But some of the key stakeholders are the local residents who are mostly opposed to it because of the increased dust, noise, and heavy machinery and trucks that will be constantly in their neighbourhood. But obviously on the other side of that is the construction industry and all the different needs that the local community needs for quarrying, like building roads and concrete and rebuilding the city after earthquakes and that sort of thing. So all the different stakeholder perspectives you need to bring in and discuss their perspective. And some ideas for writing a newspaper article. Those exemplars will give you some good ideas on what to look for, or what I'm looking for. But just keep in mind that newspaper article is written in a language that a 12-year-old can read or understand. There's no need for in-text referencing, but you need a reference list at the end. So no APA in-text referencing needed at the start, but you do need a reference list at the end. Make sure you include diagrams and images where appropriate. And the best place to go to check out information on an issue and find current topics, or ones that are either going through or have recently gone through the resource consent process, regional council websites. So there's a bunch of them in New Zealand, so it doesn't have to be Canterbury or Environment Canterbury. It can be any regional council in the country of a topic that takes your interest.